Hi, welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Vanilla Lily, also known as Vani or just Lily, whatever you want to call me. I don't really mind. I might look a little bit different if you've already watched VANI Never Sleeps Part 1. If you don't know, I use a customizable model, so this is the newest one that I am using by Suika, and this is the one that I'm going to be using from now on. So if I look any different in my next videos, that's why. If you're new here, this is my not a podcast called VANI Never Sleeps, where I read Reddit No Sleep stories. Reddit No Sleep is one of my favorite things. I used to actually read Reddit No Sleep to help me sleep, and I would read it every night before bed and fall asleep with my phone still open and wake up with it burning my hand. So I just wanted to spread some of that love here on YouTube with people who also like these things, because I feel like recently there's been a downturn in people who read Reddit No Sleep on YouTube. So that's what I'm doing. I hope you stick around, and I hope you enjoy the stories that I picked. This week, I'm just picking a couple of stories from the top from this week on Reddit No Sleep because I want to read something that I haven't read before, and then I'm going to give my reaction to them. So I hope you guys enjoy, and I hope that you find this as calming and creepy as I do. This first one is called Mary Was Born in a Black and White Room, and Scientists Didn't Let Her See Colors Until She Turned 18. She saw something we didn't. Mary's room, also known as the knowledge argument, is a philosophical concept concerning a hypothetical woman named Mary who has never seen color. She has only ever existed in a black and white room. Mary studies the world through books and a monochromatic television screen. She reads about colors, but she does not experience them visually. Can the universe be fully understood in purely physical terms? The answer differs, depending on whether one believes that we know fundamental truths about reality a priori without experience, or a posteriori with experience. I don't know if I said that right. I'm so sorry if I didn't. In other words, will Mary learn anything about color when she leaves the black and white room? It was a thought experiment. Nobody was supposed to actually do it. Oh, so it's a thought experiment. Like if you surround someone in a room with no color for their whole life and they step out of the room into color, will they see color? Okay, I see where this is going. However, in 2007, a group of researchers sought to answer that question, and the experiment they conducted would have been condemned by boards of ethics across the globe, but these were not ethical scientists, and this was no ethical organization. I would have decried its actions back then. This wasn't why I joined the agency. But I was afraid. After all, they were willing to put an innocent baby in a colorless prison cell, doomed to grow up in a near solitary confinement. Save for a nurse-dubbed nanny, what would they have done to a whistleblower? I don't know how they found the baby, and I don't want to know. Whether a parent willingly gave her up or one of the scientists intentionally bred her for the experiment, the result remains the same. A baby, named Mary, in honor of the philosophical concept which inspired the horrifying experiment, was placed in a white, windowless, foam-padded cell. She was blindfolded whenever her nurse entered the room to provide food, formula, and fresh clothes, always in the same black onesie, with coverings like mittens and socks to cover her hands and feet. She was also made to wear a facial covering akin to, oh god, I don't know how to say this, a balaclava, which covered her face. There was no mouth slit to avoid her seeing the color of her lips, and she wore black contacts in her eyes. Equally, Nanny wore the same exact attire every time she entered the room. To put it simply, Mary's daily outfit was horrid, barely any more humane than a straitjacket and a bag over the head. There was no room for error. Mary was watched by at least one person at all hours of the day and night. Should she get curious and try to sneak a peek at the color of her skin or eyes, she would receive 100 volts in the collar attached to her neck. Okay. So they covered her face, like her mouth, so she couldn't see the color of her lips, because that's a color that you're not allowed to see. And they also covered her eyes. They made her wear contacts, but she's a baby. I suppose, like, for the experiment purpose, obviously you would have to cover everything so they can't see any color at any point. But that's so crazy. It's really evil people. I know it's not real, but it's like so evil to think about. But more terrifyingly than that was the simple fact that Mary was well trained. So well trained that she never, in her 18 years of imprisonment, even attempt to take a peek at her skin. She was such a willing prisoner, never having known anything else, that I think she would have stayed in her room even if the door had been standing ajar. This initially seemed excessive, given that copious measures had been taken to ensure no reflective surfaces would be allowed within the room. Even the television monitor was fitted with an anti-glare screen. However, scientists were paranoid that Mary might somehow catch a glimpse of her green eyes. Even seeing her pale peach-colored skin would have dirtied the results of the experiment. black and white. Those were the only shades Mary was permitted to see. And when Mary started walking and talking, Nanny stopped entering the room entirely. Fresh food and clothes were delivered through the horizontal slit in the steel door, and Mary was always instructed to wear a blindfold before changing or using the bathroom, which comprised of a white porcelain toilet and a black shower head fixed to the foam wall. Revoltingly, both were exposed in that titchy room of hers. Her entire world was a box stretching a mere 4 meters across all 3 dimensions. Okay, so the one thing that I'm thinking about right now that they didn't expressly say, her food, if she's only allowed to see black and white, she's only allowed to eat black and white food. This is tragic. Oh God. I wanted to save her numerous times over the years, wanted to leave that horrid place behind, but I'm a coward. Besides, we wouldn't have got far. There's no running from these people. And the agency isn't even the greatest horror of this story. On Mary's 18th birthday, Dr. Robson delivered a thrilling message over the speaker. "Happy birthday, Mary," he said in a monotone lacking empathy. "Thank you," the girl meekly responded. "Will there be chocolate cake this year?" "I wasn't fond of the lemon last year, you see. Today we'll be celebrating in a different way, Mary," Robson replied. "Do you know your age?" "I'm 18, she croaked. "Does that mean—" "Yes, Mary," Dr. Robson said. "Today you leave the room." "I'll see color?" she asked rather innocently. Any sane and well-developed human in the outside world would have simply been glad to have freedom, but Mary had no concept of freedom, no concept of a prison. She had no understanding that this childhood had been abnormal, worse than abnormal, inhuman. To keep Mary compliant, her schooling had been rigid, with books that purposely omitted any dangerous ideas. The result of that, a girl relishing at the opportunity to not escape from her prison, but to simply see color. "Yes, Mary, you will see color. Nanny is already on her way to fetch you," Dr. Robson said. We watched live footage filmed on a closed-circuit camera from our operational room. Nanny unlocked the weighted entrance to Mary's room, and we all waited with bated breath. Waited as Nanny aided Mary in removing her black headgear. I heard Mary giggling giddily and unnervingly as the bag was removed from her head and the contacts were removed from her eyes. And then, as her first experience with a color other than black and white, Nanny removed her own black outfit to reveal a striking red dress beneath. "Oh, you're setting yourself up for failure with the red. Oh God, okay." Mary gasped. It was an intake of breath so sharp that she seemed to stop breathing. Perhaps for a moment she had stopped breathing. "What are you experiencing?" Dr. Robson asked. "Is it new? Does it feel like—" "I knew it," Mary whispered with vocal cords that sounded as if they were on the verge of snapping. Then her giggling picked up again, seeming to unnerve Nanny. "This is why you did the experiment, isn't it?" I'm going to stop for a second, just to I'm going to go over my thoughts for this. I think choosing red as the first color that she was gonna see ever was a terrible idea. Red, the color of blood, for a girl who's been trapped inside of a room her whole life, never seen anything. At the same time, you can't think of this from your own thoughts, and I think it's impossible to consider this from the perspective of someone who literally grew up their whole life being sheltered from any ideas of anything outside of those 4 walls. All of the schooling and everything that they did, they obviously didn't teach her about freedom and about the outside world and about this and that. The only thing that she knew was that she was in a room and that she wasn't allowed to see color until she was 18. As a psychology student, that's I think why Reddit No Sleep is so interesting to me, because you kind of have to imagine it from the perspectives that they give you of people. I'm just rambling, but if you get what I mean, you get what I mean. If you don't, I'd just be rambling. We left off, she said, "This is why you did the experiment, isn't it?" "Does this feel like a new experience, Mary?" Robson asked with a hint of impatience, seemingly oblivious to Nanny's discomfort. It was plainly clear to me, even through the grainy camera footage. Mary shot her teary face up to the camera. "Yes, but I've been waiting for it." "Yes, I know that, Mary," Robson groaned. "But so have I. Tell me about it. Tell me about the red. How does it feel to experience true color for the first time?" "We're seeing some interesting brain activity on the screen here, but your words would really help us too." "I'm not talking about the red," Mary interjected. And then she jabbed an accusatory finger at Nanny's dress in a way that frightened me. Certainly frightened Nanny, who jumped backwards. "I'm talking about that," she giggled. "I knew there was something you were leaving out of the books and TV shows over the years." "What are you saying, Mary?" Robson asked. "I don't understand." "Red. You're looking at red." "Red and the second color," she insisted. "The color you didn't describe in the books. None of the adjectives you've used to describe this one. Red is just as stark, powerful, and passionate as described. The blue color of Nanny's eyes is as soothing and tender as described. But this other color on her dress is just..." What other color? Robson cried. It's just red, Mary. Right here, Mary yelled as she lunged forward and prodded Nanny in the abdomen. The woman in the red dress jumped backwards, clutching her stomach, and then Mary's eyes went wide. Oh, she whimpered. What, Mary? Robson asked. Please tell me what you're seeing. What I saw, she whispered, moving her fingers up to Nanny's face. It moved up there, and now it's gone. Please describe this other color to us, Mary, Robson said, before putting an image up on Mary's television set. Which one of these is it? Mary's eyes shot to the television screen and quickly scanned the 12 main colors on the screen. It's not one of those. Not a different shade of one of those. It's a different color. There are 10 million possible permutations of colors, Mary, Robson said. Perhaps you just... No, Dr. Robson, the girl interrupted, panting heavily as her eyes darted back to Nanny's face, studying it. I understand how shades work. The shade of blue on the screen differs from the color of Nanny's eyes. But that other color, it wasn't on the screen. It was... Mary stopped. Her eyes widened. Then she said, I'm sorry. Nanny frowned. That's okay, Mary. I know you didn't mean to. Not you, Mary hissed before leaning forward, trying to look into Nanny's mouth. I'm sorry I saw you. Okay, I'm taking back all the psychology stuff I said. What the fuck's happening? Mary, you're not making any sense, Dr. Robson said. I think we've done enough for today. We'll do more tomorrow, so... I wasn't supposed to see it, Mary moaned, shooting backwards, clunking into the foam wall, then seizing clumps of her straggly hair. Oh God, why don't you see it? Nanny, it's in you. Nanny looked up at the camera. I'd like to step outside now, Dr. Robson. Dr. Robson sighed, then pinched the bridge of his nose between two fingers. Fine, Nanny. Nanny had already spun on her heel to leave. She would have done so regardless of whether Robson gave her permission, as Mary was clearly disturbing her. But she barely took one step before her body fixed itself to the floor. And then Nanny juddered like a fleshy bobblehead. Like, oh. I was overcome by a warm sensation across my skin, and moments later there came a thunderous explosion. Skin flew into the walls from a red eruption of dress fragments, blood, and guts. Nanny had spontaneously imploded. Screams filled the operating room. Some fled, some fainted, and others simply froze. I don't know whether any of them noticed Mary clawing out her eyes, leaving streaks of blood and tears across her cheeks as mere minutes after seeing color for the first time, she answered she would never see anything else, ever again. I'm sorry, the eyeless woman wailed. I didn't know I wasn't allowed. Please, I'll never see you again. As I saw a trail of blood run from Nanny's destructed corpse towards the front door, clearly painted by something unseen, a deep dread filled my chest. I realized that my fleeing colleagues had the right idea, so I fled in fear, leaving Dr. Robson and my frozen coworkers behind. I don't remember leaving the building, getting in my car and going home, but I must have done those things. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be posting this for all of you. It's been 4 hours. 4 hours since Mary saw color for the first time. Saw a color none of us saw. What was it? Why could only Mary see it? Okay, so... in theory, like, obviously I don't think that Reddit no sleep stories are going to go into like psychological like evaluations and things like that. I did believe that this was going to take like a weird turn, so I'm not surprised by how it ended. However, I've read similar things to this before, where like they do a little thought experiment or a physical experiment or whatever, and then it ends up like the person that they're doing the experiment on has some crazy magical powers, and like it's not like a super unique idea. It's not a bad story. It's not a bad idea. It's a good story. I do like the story, but I feel like it's a good story. I'll say it's a good story, and I kind of wish that they had gone into a little of detail more about like the psychological part. I think that's what really gets me with Reddit no sleep stories. If they're super psychologically deep, if they're deep, that's the word. Someone said, simply having a lens that made every visible thing monochromatic had solved the whole problem. It would have been easier to make her never remove it, like we train elephants to never escape rope or lions to never hunt from childhood upbringing. I believe that having a digital lens on her eyes that made everything monochromatic, I feel like that's a bit of a reach on the believable. I believe Reddit no sleep is supposed to be believable, so I think that the monochromatic lens wouldn't quite make that believable. Yeah, it was a good story. I like things that explore psychologically, like psychological thought processes, things like that. But I think it was very quick and it turned really fast. I still don't understand why the woman exploded. It was a good short read. If you have any stories, Reddit No Sleep stories that you really like, I would really, really like you to recommend them. You can message them to me on Discord or on Twitter, or if you comment them below, just the names. I don't know if YouTube punishes posting links, so you can just put the name and I'll look it up. Otherwise, I just kind of find the ones that I think are cool. I have some bookmarked that I'm gonna go back to that are older, but I know there's also a lot of classics, like the forest ones, like the stairs in the forest and things like that. The first story was called Mary Was Born in a Black and White Room and Scientists Didn't Let Her See Colors Until She Turned 18. That was by you/The Eagle Strikes on Reddit. I'm gonna link them in the bio as well, or not the bio, the description as well, so make sure you check them out. And it looks like The Eagle Strikes is an author of horror fiction. Horror fiction. That sounded like I said horror fiction. So just make sure you check them out. And it looks like they have their own subreddit as well. The second one is called I Work at a Hotel and I've been watching a man on the cameras run on the hotel gym's treadmill for hours. And this is by hold on. This one's by It's Ya Bo V on Reddit No Sleep. And I will link it down below as well. I work the graveyard shift at a small, usually mostly empty hotel just off the highway. The hours suck, obviously, but other than that, it's a pretty cushy job. I clock in, settle down in the back office, and watch the downloaded movies or shows on my laptop. The connection sucks back there, but it's a place I can sit out of view of the guests and relax, so I just prepare accordingly. Periodically, I'll glance at the CCTV monitor hung up on the wall in front of my desk. Mostly it's just to see if there's anyone at the front desk that needs anything, or to see when my coworkers arrive in the morning so I can brush the Cheeto dust off my shirt and pretend like I wasn't half asleep only moments before they arrived. The cameras show several other areas of the hotel too. Each stairwell, several shots of the parking lot outside, and each exit door, the kitchen, laundry room, the lobby, and a few other areas. There's also a camera in the gym, but no one ever uses it. The hotel I work for isn't really known for their stellar cleanliness or functioning facilities. Our pool hasn't been open to guests in months, and our gym has like one functioning treadmill, a couple weights, and I think a pull-up bar. I've been working here for a few months, and I don't know if I've ever been inside. Anyway, at about 2 a.m., 2 hours into my shift, I glance up from my show to check the cameras and notice that the light in the gym is on. The grainy footage shows a man, average looking, maybe on the older and fatter side, running on the one working treadmill. I don't recall checking him in, but I'm not the one who usually handles that stuff. Most people are in before my shift anyway. Whatever, I thought. I can hardly judge him. Looks like he's doing more exercise than I ever do. I just heard a bump in my apartment and now I'm scared. I go back to my show, getting up once to grab another bag of chips from the concession area. When I get back, I check the time, 2:32 a.m. The one instance of actual work I do starts at 3 when I run the nightly audit on the computer, so I have to start keeping track of the time more closely around then. I spare a glance towards the cameras, and I'm surprised to see that the man is still running on the treadmill. Well, probably not still, right? Like, he probably took a break to do other workouts and now he's back to running? Or maybe he's been running the whole time. I don't know shit about exercise. In the crappy video quality, I could see that he was sweating pretty hard. His shirt was almost an entire shade darker, and his thinning hair was visibly slicked back. At the time, all I thought was, good for him, I guess. Maybe this old fat guy should be motivating me to start working out for real. I finished another episode before getting up to start the audit process, which usually takes me a couple minutes. Before I left the office, I checked the cameras again, just because I didn't like being surprised by a guest waiting for me at the desk whenever I went up. My eye immediately caught on to the treadmill guy, not just because he was still running, which was odd enough. I mean, it had been a full hour, and I'm pretty sure nonstop running at a pretty quick pace for a guy like him. No, it's because this time he was staring straight at me. Well, not me, but the camera in the corner of the gym. Okay, that's creepy. I mean, like, a guy running for an hour straight on a treadmill. I mean, even if he's a big guy, big guys can run for a long amounts of time. That's one thing. Maybe he's like punishing himself. He's like, man, I ate too much today, broke my diet, and now I have to burn off all these calories. That's one thing. But if you look up and he's just staring straight at you, nah. No, that's too much. I froze. We locked eyes, even though I obviously knew he couldn't see me. He was dead-eyed with a slack, exhausted expression on his face, and yet he was still running, his arms no longer swinging along with his run, but instead hanging limply at his sides. Oh my god. As I don't know if I'm like clashing niches here, but all I can picture is the Titans from Attack on Titan when they run with their arms limp at their sides. Oh my god, I'm sorry I had to say it. I stood there for a long few seconds, confused and creeped out by what I was seeing. Right before I decided to write this guy off as a weirdo and turn away from the monitor to go do my job, he fucking smiled at me. I'm sorry, but I heard a sound behind me, and I was so freaked out. Anyway, he was smiling. He smiled at him. Should I re-record that? I'm just gonna leave that in there because it's suspense. Where was I? He fucking smiled at me. Okay, at the camera, I mean. This creepy, wide smile that didn't really reach his eyes, and the worst part is that his tongue was just sort of limply flopped out of his mouth, as if the only thing holding it in was his closed lips. It just bounced around like he had no control over it, moving to the rhythm of his jog. It was also way too long, like a normal tongue would just stay in a person's mouth if it was completely relaxed, right? Okay, yeah, you have a point. Like, if it's a relaxed tongue, like, it's not gonna flop out of your... That's weird. That's weird. Needless to say, I was really creeped out by this guy. I don't know how long he was staring at the camera in the corner or why he decided to smile right as I noticed him doing it. Obviously, it was just weird timing, or he probably decided to just fuck up with whoever might be watching the cams right at that moment that I looked up at him. But somewhere deep inside me, I felt like I was actually being watched. It was about to be 3 a.m. and if I didn't have the audit done by 3:15, I'd get another write-up and probably yelled at by my boss about how it's literally the only thing I have to do all night. As anxious as this guy was making me feel, I didn't want to take my eyes off him just in case. I didn't even know why, honestly. However, I swallowed my nerves, tore my eyes away from the screen, and fast walked my way to the front desk with my mind made up to do the audit as quickly as possible. Get the audit done, boy. Ain't no weirdo smiling at the camera worth losing your job. Let me describe the layout real quick here. The back office is around the corner from the front desk. Down the hallway, past the elevators, the lobby where we do breakfast, the pool, and the laundry room is where the gym is. It's not the most well-designed hotel, and there's a few twists and turns leading to the gym at the other side of the first floor that makes directing guests verbally an annoying task. That also meant that as I stepped out to the front desk, I didn't have a straight shot to be able to see the gym. On one hand, I was relieved that I was kind of far away from the weirdo. On the other hand, I was made even more anxious that he was now no longer in my sights. I booted up the ancient computer and started printing reports, filing them away in various folders with one hand and signing stuff that needed to be signed with the other. I'm sure I got some stuff wrong, but my priority was finishing this quickly so I could go back to the office. I felt exposed out here. Couldn't see anything but the lobby, the sound of some pop radio playing way too loud, drowning out any other potential noise. Every second for the 10 minutes that I was out there felt like something really wrong was about to happen. I had to bring some of these reports back to the office to file them away while the audit process was running on the computers. Normally I just did this at the end of the process to not make as many trips back and forth, and because as soon as the process ended, I had to update the system to roll over to the next day. If I didn't do that part within a minute of the process ending, the whole thing would get fucked up. This time though, as soon as the computer started processing, I raced back to the office to check on the cameras again, if only just to confirm that he was still doing the same thing. The first thing I noticed when I got back was that the light in the gym had turned off. I hadn't heard the heavy gym door open and close from the front desk, but maybe the stereo was just too loud to hear it. I began scanning the rest of the displays, trying to find him on his way back to his room in the stairwell or the elevators or whatever, just to give me some peace of mind. At first, I didn't see him anywhere on the cameras until my eyes glanced back at the gym display. It was subtle, but the dim light on the treadmill display that indicated that it was in use looked like it was still on. I thought that maybe he just forgot to turn it off when he left, and then I saw him. He was still in there, still running. I just hadn't seen him at first in the dark. His body was barely lit by the treadmill, but that's not why I noticed him. His eyes were two pinpricks of light reflecting off the display, still staring directly at me. I choked back a gasp when I saw that. Why had the light shut off while he was still in there? They were motion sensors. Maybe if he was standing perfectly still, they'd turn off eventually, but there he was, still running at the same place. He was clearly exhausted, his whole body drooping forward as his arms swung back and forth, but his legs continued moving at the same speed as they were an hour ago when I first noticed him, and his head was craned at an unnatural angle to keep staring at me. In the back of my mind, I considered that maybe this man needed help, some sort of mental illness thing made him keep running, but my fear kept me rooted to the spot, not breaking eye contact. I still had the audit process to complete, but there was no way I was taking my eyes off him again. What the fuck, I muttered under my breath, but as the last word left my mouth, he suddenly stopped running and fell off the treadmill, landing headfirst on the tile floor. The cameras didn't record sound, but I could swear I heard a crack. In my shock, it took way too long to react The lights coming back on and him standing with his neck clearly broken and his head limply hanging backwards off of it. As soon as he stood, he ran out of the room, passing by the laundry camera, the pool, and making it halfway through the lobby before I broke out of my paralysis to run and slam the door to the office shut, locking it in the process. A slam against the door shook the office 2 seconds after I had closed it, and then another and another, like he was using his body as a battering ram. I looked back at the cameras, but there were none pointing directly at the back office's entrance. The only thing I could see was the trail he left of blood and what looked like shit all the way from the gym to the lobby. The entire room shook with the force of this fucking thing slamming itself against the door, and every call I tried to make to the police failed again and again. The door was heavy, and I didn't have faith in holding it up for that long if he just kept going at this rate. I just kept looking back and forth between the door and the cameras, selfishly hoping that a guest would notice the commotion and draw this thing's attention away from me. I don't know what would happen to them if they did, but at that moment, I was only focused on getting the fuck out of the hotel. After a few minutes, 3 to be exact, the banging stopped. It took a second for me to notice, but once I did, my eyes shot to the monitor. He was definitely still there since there was no bloody footprints leading away from the back office. I wish I could forget just how long I stood there staring at the screen, willing it to show this thing walking away. But the display on the bottom right of the monitor showed me each excruciating minute, which is how I knew exactly the time another guest started making his way down to the lobby. At 6:28, I noticed movement on the camera that was pointing towards the 3rd floor elevator. A young man dressed in workout clothes carrying a gym towel. My heart sank, and I began to think of ways to warn him or somehow prevent this thing from doing whatever it was trying to do. I could have pulled the fire alarm, I could have grabbed a chair or something to use a weapon and jumped out at it. Hell, I could have at least stopped watching. I would have just pulled the fire alarm. I mean, I guess I say that, but I'm not in this situation. I didn't do any of those things. I watched as the man entered the elevator at the 3rd floor and descended down to the lobby. The second those elevator doors opened, the creature that had been standing in front of my office door for the past 3 hours and 18 minutes made its move. With speed I could barely keep up with over several camera displays, its mangled body ran on perfectly functioning legs towards the guests, slamming into walls and leaving a bloody imprint on them as it went. The guest made it 1 foot off of the elevator before this thing tackled him back into it. I only saw a spray of blood hit the opposite wall as the elevator door slowly closed again. This was my chance to get the fuck out of the hotel and never look back, but again I found myself rooted to the ground in fear. Stop being a pussy! Stop it! Stop it! I couldn't bring myself to tear my eyes away from the monitor, so I watched as the elevator door slowly opened once again. The guest walked out just the same as he had walked in. He had the same chipper smile on his face, and I watched as he walked past the front desk, past the lobby, and the pool, and the laundry room, all the way to the gym. I was out the door and on my way to never coming back again before I could see him enter. I'm writing this in my car a few miles away from the hotel because I couldn't stand to go home yet, but I figured I should make my version of events public just in case. I know that man is running on the treadmill right now, and my coworkers or whoever comes into the hotel next is going to have to deal with what I went through all over again, but I can't bring myself to care. I feel too claustrophobic to even stay inside my car at this point after spending so long in the back office. My legs are still shaking, and the only thing I want to do right now is run, as fast and as far away as I can. Boy. Man, I don't even know what to tell you. You should have pulled the fire alarm. Now that guy's possessed and he's gonna die and it's all your fault. That was a good one. Okay, I like these kinds of stories as well. I like all Reddit no sleep stories. So just saying that I like it is just an obvious thing for me to say. But I like these kinds of stories because it kind of puts you in the place of someone who would be experiencing something like this, and how you think that you would just be the hero and you would be doing this. Like, you would pull the fire alarm, you would go out and fight the monster, you would have gone to the gym and yell and tried to get him to stop running on the treadmill, you would have called the police to help him. But if you're not in that position, you don't truly know what you'd actually do. And probably if you were in that position and you saw something that wasn't real, like something that you don't believe is real, you have to face the fact that it's happening right in front of you, you're probably gonna feel the same way that guy felt. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really enjoy doing these videos. Like I said, Reddit No Sleep, I love the stories, I love the subreddit, I used to fall asleep reading it. It was something that I cherished a lot during during my younger days, and I'm glad that it's still poppin', still thriving. So I really do want to hear from you guys what your favorite Read and No Sleep stories are. I really want to read them. I want to experience them the same way I've experienced all the other ones that I've read. So please, if you have any that you really enjoy, leave them down below. I might have read them and I might be able to give you my feedback on how I feel about them. So I want to know. I want to know if we've read the same stories. Feel free to leave a comment down below, or you can message me in the community Discord, or you can message me on Twitter, any of those places. Also, if you guys didn't know, I stream on Twitch under Vanilla Lily as well. I have my other VODs from my stream up here, and I also do gym vlogs on here as well. I also have a Patreon if you guys are interested in that, but it's more of just like personal IRL stuff as well as some full-length gym vlogs. I'm gonna be, I think, lowering the subscription to the base price and just giving everyone all the content from that, because this year has been really tough so far on keeping up with content outside of streaming video editing. Keeping up with posting constantly on Patreon has been really difficult, so I'm just gonna make that a lower rate for you guys to just experience like personalized stuff. So if that's something you're interested in, thank you guys for watching. I appreciate it. Let me know your recommendations. I hope that you enjoyed these stories. These were both from the top from this week on Reddit No Sleep, and I will link them down in the description below if you guys want to go give them some love. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it.